Welcome to Innovations in Accessible Scholarly Communication. I'm Stephanie Rosen. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. And I've worked at the intersection of accessibility and higher education for over 10 years. My current role is accessibility strategist and librarian for disability studies at the University of Michigan Library. In that role, I collaborate with colleagues to integrate accessible practices into all areas of library work, including scholarly communications. I'm also the author of Accessibility and Publishing, a short book published in 2018 and available open access for you, giving an overview of issues in the field. So what is accessibility? Well, first, you know what open access is. It is a free, immediate, unrestricted, and online availability of research. It is the promise that anyone can use the results of research, and it is a more equitable knowledge ecosystem. But what if I use software to read text aloud and it cannot interact with an open access digital article? Or what if I use voice input to control my computer and it won't work with some interactive quiz questions in an open educational resource? Or what if I use captions to understand audio and an open data set includes recorded interviews without captions or transcripts? The promise of open access can remain unfulfilled if the format of research is itself a barrier to access. So accessibility delivers on the promise of open. It ensures that digital content is barrier-free through design standards that emphasize universal formats and content that is easy to perceive, easy to operate, and easy to understand. So that means it can be perceived across differences in sensory modes and differences in technology, and operated across differences in input devices, fine motor control, and so on, and understood, which means consistent and predictable design and tolerance for user error. The standards that describe this in detail are the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, linked from this slide. I also recommend the Plain Language Accessibility Guidelines summary from Kin and Carta. So what is possible now in accessibility for scholarly communications, thanks to past innovations? Well, now we can have workflows for born accessible scholarly communications. That means the main version of publications can be accessible for all readers without the need for accommodations. We have accessible practices for authors, editors, publishers, and all actors in this ecosystem. And we have format convergence in EPUB version 3 and later. The work that was previously done by the DAISY Consortium to develop book formats for readers with print disabilities, and work that was formerly done by the World Wide Web Consortium to develop digital accessibility for the web across all disabilities and tech, has converged in this EPUB standard, which is a universal format for electronic books that supports accessibility. So what are current best practices? Well, in production, best practices are workflows for born accessible scholarly communications. Is best practice to aim to meet accessibility standards. So that would include the EPUB accessibility standards and the guidelines that expand on them. Or if not using an EPUB as an output format, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which broadly describe accessibility for digital content. And it's best practice to regularly assess and adjust. I've cited an article at the bottom of this slide by George Kirscher called "Do You Have a Broken Link in Your Accessibility Chain?" And it's helpful to think about the entire production workflow as a chain where any broken link could affect the accessibility of the final output. This is why regular assessment and adjustment is necessary. There's lots of guidance out there on accessible production practices in scholarly communication. The Inclusive Publishing website is a hub for information on creating accessible digital publications. The Book Industry Study Group Quick Start Guide to Accessible Publishing, and also the Accessible Publishing Best Practice Guidelines for Publishers, which is created by ABC Accessible Books Consortium. These two are industry guidebooks that offer practical advice for achieving accessible workflows and publications. And finally, there is the Benetech Global Certified Accessible Program, which is an assessment and certification program for organizations who are consistently creating accessible publications and who want to publicize that work and ensure readers of the quality and accessibility of their content. And there are some case studies that may be helpful to you as you think about change in your organization. From Sage Publishing, there's an article called The Secrets of Failing Better, which offers the account of how one publisher approached organizational change from 2015 to 17 in order to embed accessibility in their entire production workflow. And then from the University of Texas at Arlington, Accessibility Practices in OER Workflows. This organization is the 2021 of the Library Publishing Coalition Publishing Practice Award for Accessibility. And in the information on their award, you'll find more about this program to support the development of accessible OER by educating authors and embedding accessibility in production. So, best practices for editorial and authors. Best practices means authoring accessible content, and in particular, providing text alternatives for visual content and accessible audio-visual media. So this is the responsibility of both authors and editors, and the education and advocacy work can happen on both sides. Some guidance and case studies related to editorial and authorship. There's the Describing Visual Resources Toolkit, which offers guidance for authors, editors, publishers, and arts organizations on how to describe visual content in arts and humanities publications. There's the Diagram Center Image Description Guidelines, which is a similar guide, but for educational publications in science, tech, engineering, and math fields. There's the Described and Captioned Media Program, which offers resources on creating quality captions and descriptions for visual moving images. An article called Beyond the Mandates, the Far-Reaching Benefits of Media Accessibility, which gives an overview. And the Taylor and Francis Group is a case study who won the Accessible Books Consortium International Excellence Award this year, and they were recognized in part for their processes, which have authors create and submit text descriptions of images at the manuscript stage. So what's next for accessible scholarly communications? Some big areas that I'd like to highlight are accessibility metadata. This is metadata about accessibility. It's always been part of EPUB 3, but it's not widely used and not available to readers on many platforms. There was just published a user experience guide for displaying accessibility metadata, and there's a lot of work to do to use and expose this metadata so readers know beforehand if a publication will be accessible to them. Another big area is accessible data, so that is accessible formats for various types of data. This is a field with a lot of room to grow. We need standards and guidance that will apply to a range of data formats across disciplines. And finally, work processes. Accessibility and scholarly communications cannot merely be about access to the final output, It must also be about access to its cultures, its processes, its positions. So accessibility of events like this one, accessibility of workplaces is very important and a place where we can look to grow. Thank you very much.